Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Zach from the ZAP podcast. I have always wanted to start a podcast, but I never knew where to start or where to even begin. And then I stumbled across the Anchor app. I love the Anchor app because it's completely free and it has all the editing and uploading capabilities that you need right from your phone. So it's super easy and super user friendly. If you've always wanted to start a podcast, go download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, let's get on to the episode.
All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach. Today I'm here with a very special guest. I am here with Tyler Yamauchi. Tyler, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Zach?
Good, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thanks for taking some time to be a part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, Tyler is a really, really awesome person. You might recognize the name from some of the various, things he's accomplished in his career so far. So, he was once an gymnast at the University of Illinois, where he had a lot of great accomplishments there. And then you might know him from American Ninja Warrior, where he's been competing for quite a few seasons there. In addition to his athletic career, he's also pursued a career in physical therapy, and that is where you can currently find him working out of like the Chicago area, specializing with gymnasts. But that's a little bit about Tyler and his background. But do you mind kind of going in depth about who you are and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Tyler Yamauchi. I grew up doing gymnastics my whole life. I made junior national team, got to compete internationally for the United States. Was, I don't know, maybe top 10, top 15 in the country. Um, and yeah, got a scholarship, and I always wanted to do something along the lines of working with athletes or gymnasts, but I didn't want to just get stuck into coaching. I wanted like another avenue possibly if I could find one, and I kind of stumbled upon physical therapy whenever I was kind of thinking about this stuff, and that was the path I decided to choose, and that's the path I'm still on.
Awesome, I love it. And you mentioned being a gymnast all your life. What got you into gymnastics in the first place?
Yeah, so I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me. So he was in it like at the YMCA before I was born. So then whenever, he enjoyed it, he was pretty good at it. Whenever I was born, I kind of was just thrown into it since, you're dropping off one sibling, you might as well drop off the other.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I know that through your career as a gymnast and just even what you're doing now, it's very movement based. So why has movement been important to you, or like a even like a theme throughout your life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the affinity of, you're attracted to things that you're good at, or if it's kind of also you're uh, already into something and then you end up becoming even better at it.
Hmm.
But yeah, movement has always been something that I've really enjoyed, and gymnastics is one of the ultimate lessons of movement, physics, things of that nature. I'm a very like physics brain person, so
Okay.
like chemistry was not my strong suit. I did not really like that. But they say, oh, you're either a physics or a chem, and it's definitely I'm a physics type person. And I don't know, like those types of things get me excited for
Okay.
whatever reason.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So then it kind of makes sense that the transition into Ninja Warrior seemed pretty logical for you then.
Right. I mean, I always wanted to try the show, even, when it was only in Japan. Figuring out
Y-
how to. Oh,
I
sorry. Are you okay? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Um, yeah. So like, I always wanted to do Ninja Warrior, even
Hmm.
when watching it in Japan, but they had the warp wall, and
Yeah.
I remember like Paul Hom, who's like a way better gymnast than I ever was. He like he got invited to go to Japan and try Sasuke, and he didn't make the wall. And I'm just like, if he can't make the wall, I probably physically can't even do it.
Sure.
And that was before they even had ninja gyms in the U.S. or anywhere. So no one really had a warp wall to train on. It made no sense except if you're like David Campbell out in California and you build it.
Right.
So um, yeah. So basically, I eventually tried the warp wall once. I found a location in Chicago. It was like the only place that had a warp wall. It was like a ninja gym. It had like a warp wall and like a rig for like, like maybe some laches, and that was like
Okay.
considered a ninja gym back then.
Right.
And and it took me about 15, 20 tries, but I got it the first day and like terrible shoes. And I was like, all right, so I mean, I could physically do this. It's not impossible. I just need to
Yeah.
practice it more, and I need to get my legs into shape and things of that nature. So once I figured I could do the warp wall, I'm like, well, yeah, let's give this thing a shot because I have pretty good upper body strength.
Okay. Gotcha. So, what is that secret to the warp wall?
Um, it is it's like a rhythm. Like
Okay.
for me, because I'm shorter, I have to utilize every step,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to find that rhythm and power. So my last couple steps, you're really not pushing anymore. You're almost just going with it.
Okay.
Because if you try pushing hard, especially when hitting that like 90-degree angle, your foot's going to slip, and then you're not going to get up. So all the acceleration actually occurs on the run up for me.
Okay.
So the less run up, the harder it is for me to do it. And
Gotcha.
like the 18-foot wall with the amount of run up that they allow, I don't know if I'm tall enough to make it, or if I just need to get stronger so I can accelerate a lot faster within like 2 steps, because that's pretty much all you get. Um,
Okay.
but that would be my limitation. If they gave me 20-foot run up, I could probably get the 18-foot wall, because if I have the momentum, I can kind of ride it up.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with like the rest of your ninja training and just like the courses, how much does height play a factor into being able to do the obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So like there are times when like they go through rules before the show starts, and they'll like, usually I'm the shortest, if not maybe another girl might be shorter than me.
Right.
And so they'll have an obstacle, and they can't have it too low sometimes because a taller person would kick the platform. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yep.
So, and then it's not like they're going to put a trampoline or a springboard for every single obstacle.
Right.
And so they have to figure out, oh, okay, like, Tyler, come on up here and see if you can reach it, or and then if I can't, they'll like literally they'll put a box there for me. So so that's like a funny little caveat that you
Yeah.
don't, it's like TV magic. You don't know that there's a difference there.
Right.
But sometimes for me and like other short athletes, part of the obstacle is actually getting on the obstacle.
Okay. Gotcha.
Versus other people are just like, oh, I'm just gonna grab it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I have to, like, that's a difference for being shorter, is, yeah, you have to kind of plan out everything. Like if you're a taller athlete, you can grab your obstacle and like push back and like have a
Mm-hmm.
good solid, forward back motion. Versus if you're shorter and you jump and grab and you have no swing, well then you have to generate swing, which takes more time. If you get crooked at all, you can't correct it because you can't go back to the platform and touch it, or you're disqualified.
Right.
So there's definitely things that, as a shorter person, you want to be aware of.
Yeah.
Some of the balance obstacles are not as good for a shorter person, and but some of them are, because typically if you're shorter, you're going to be lighter,
Yep.
because there are obstacles where, like Jody Avila, he's like 6 foot something,
Yeah.
and he doesn't weigh a lot, but I mean, by being six something, he obviously weighs a lot more than me.
Right.
And so there's obstacles for a really tall guy that has a disadvantage, and there's obstacles for a short guy that also have its disadvantages. So I feel like it evens out. So if you want to do good at ninja, just be like 5'10", really
Okay.
lean, and
Yeah.
then that'll be like the optimal height.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, Tyler, it's kind of funny because I was someone who, when I was in elementary school, whatever, I was really tall, and then pretty much like sixth grade rolls around, and I don't think I've grown, an inch since then. So
Okay.
I'm at about like 5'4". I don't think I'm gonna get any taller. Hopefully I won't get any shorter. So I've kind of always went through my life with that, like, man, like I wish I had, you know, even just like 2, 3 more inches of height on me. Um,
Mm.
have you, like, I guess just as someone else who identifies like me on the shorter side of things, like, has that been something that you've ever like struggled with, or is it just something that you're like,
Yeah,
nah, it's
right.
me, I can't do anything about it?
Well, yeah, so for me, I was never the tallest kid.
Okay.
So I was always the shortest, which
Okay.
I was fine with because I was also like very strong,
Yeah.
you know? So I felt like if anyone thought, I don't know, whatever of me, or oh, he's just short and puny, but then it's like this kid's faster than you when you're playing tag, or like
Hmm.
it was just it was like ended up being a non-factor because I feel like maybe my athleticism kind of spoke for myself in general. Um, and I don't know. I guess I was just confident in myself. Maybe being having an older brother that's like 4 years older than you is helpful. Makes
Hmm.
you feel a little more confident. He's got friends that are obviously his age, and then those friends think that their little brother is cool, or whatever. So I don't know. I just always had a decent amount of confidence in myself. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting where it came from, but yeah, I mean, there are times where oh, I need to get something from the top cabinet. Let me
Yeah.
go grab a stool. And then like I'll have a friend over and then they'll just like, oh, I can get that. And then they just don't have to do anything. And you're like, really? Okay. Yeah. Like
Yep.
I get jealous at a lot of those moments, or I'm over here trying to jump and reset a ninja obstacle, and
Yeah.
then someone's like, oh, he's struggling over there, and they just reach up and change it. Like, oh,
Yep.
thanks. You know, like, yeah, that would be nice. Or I have to
Yeah.
grab a block for everything. So that does get old.
I can totally relate to that. Awesome. And now, when you were doing your bachelor's in kinesiology and then even after that, pursuing your degree in physical therapy, did you find that the education that you were receiving, did that help you with any of your like movement performance or um, just being able to continue on as an athlete? Or was it more so just like, I'm learning these cool things, but it's not necessarily something that's benefiting my performance per
Yeah, that's
se?
interesting. So there definitely are some classes that, you can take nuggets of wisdom from.
Okay.
And I would say there's, sometimes there are classes that you wouldn't have even thought.
Mm,
Um, I don't, just one thing sticks out in my mind, but it was basically a class about like embryology. So basically, as you're an embryo and as you grow,
hmm.
and then like, alcohol fetal syndrome. And I
Yeah.
didn't really, I mean, obviously drinking while you're pregnant is not good, but there's literally a period. I don't know if it's the second trimester or somewhere in the first, near the end of the first, but like if the woman ingest any alcohol during that period of time, like the children, I don't think have any arms or legs. And
Oh,
I'm just like,
wow.
that is crazy. I don't know,
Yeah.
like just something like that like blows your mind how specific everything is when we're growing,
Hmm.
or how like genomically or just our bodies are so can be so fragile yet so resilient, you
Yeah.
know things like that. Like I always found that really interesting. Or um, things with like I guess you could look at like a VO2 max, right? But I didn't really find that interesting at the time while I'm in school, which
Okay.
is basically kind of like seeing how good your heart works, right? Or
Yeah.
things of that nature. Um, and then maybe longevity of life. I ended up taking this one class that I don't even think was required, but it was very interesting. And from that class, I actually decided, you know what? One of my goals is I want to live to be 100 years old.
Right.
And it's just it wasn't even really like a huge hard class, but it was more of an interesting, thought provoking class where they have something called ikigai in Japanese or Japan, where it's kind of like what's your mission, or what, like why do you wake up every day type of thing.
Hmm.
Like what do you work towards. So like trying to find like what it is you live for. And for me, I from the beginning of this, it's kind of like, yeah, I kind of live for movement. Like I really enjoy movement. It's good for you. It would help increase your lifespan and things of that nature. So it's just something that I would like to share with other people as well, or I like sharing with other people.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a really cool goal, and it's something that like I don't know. I feel like you don't really hear that as like someone's goal too often, but I think it's a really good one, and I think yeah, like definitely movement can play a huge part into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, even outside of that, just, I mean, I never had a great diet. So like when I was in high school, I probably had the worst breakfast you could think of. I ate a hot pocket and a Coke every morning
Oh
before I went
wow.
to bed.
Okay.
That was my, and then for lunch, this is like ridiculous. For lunch, my mom would give me, I don't know, like $6, $7 or $5 or whatever,
Yeah.
and I would go, oh, okay, so I have this money. Well, how little can I spend and still be full? So then they had fries for 60 cents and chips for 50 cents. So I would spend $1.10 out of my $5. So I could save the rest of the money just for whatever,
Okay.
I would want money for later. And so I would, that would be my lunch. It would be chips and fries for lunch. I mean, and like I was on like junior national team. Like I was a pretty good gymnast,
Yeah.
And so like thinking back, it's like, well, I mean, it worked for me, but I don't think that's, I don't think I would promote that for other people. Um, and then, but for dinner, I would actually have like a decent sized dinner,
Okay.
and yeah, and so for me, like nutrition was never that important because I was so active and I never
Okay.
felt any like changes and things of that nature. But now I just kind of took a dive into intermittent fasting because
Yeah.
I ended up doing it through college just because it worked with my schedule.
Okay.
And I didn't like, I wasn't trying to intermittently fast. It's just what I did because after gymnastics, I don't know, I think you finish around 6, 7 o'clock at night. You go home, you eat like, I eat a pretty big dinner or whatever it is, big meal. Wake up in the morning at like, 7 or 8, 6, whatever. And then I'm not really hungry, and I was never a breakfast person because I mean, I ate a hot pocket and drank soda. So like,
Yeah.
I wasn't like eating breakfast anyways. But when I woke up, I wasn't hungry because I had just eaten a big meal. So I would just go to class, maybe 3 classes in a row. So from 8, 9, 10, and get out around 11, 12 o'clock. And that's when I would finally eat lunch, and I'd eat a big lunch because I'd be starving. And
Right.
I'm a college student, so it's not like I'm buying snacks and like, very organized or anything. Like you
Right.
just kind of make do with what you got. And yeah, and then, I probably have 2, 3 hours for it to digest, and then I practice from like, 2 or 3 till 6 again. So that was kind of my lifestyle. So I ended up fasting, but not because I really wanted to, but because it worked with my schedule. So now
Right.
I'm trying to do like an 8 hour time window and kind of track what my body does and see how it is because it is interesting. I feel like I'm not a big person who believes in diets. I don't
Yeah.
think you should have to restrict things. Um, I think for the most part, we all know what's healthy and not healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just hard to make those choices to eat healthier.
Right.
So, but with intermittent fasting, you don't have to restrict anything that you're eating. You just, it's not what you eat, it's when you eat is more important. And that's an interesting concept. So I'm trying that. And obviously, I do eat healthier now. My wife makes me eat vegetables and I cook vegetables. And, so I'm on a much better diet and
Right.
much more balanced diet now. But yeah, it's so funny. One of my buddies, Ethan Swanson, I think, or I don't even know who calls me this. Oh no, it's Dan Palizzi. He, what is that? What's that car from Back to the Future? The
DeLorean?
yeah, the DeLorean. You know how he like puts trash in the DeLorean and then it like goes really fast?
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you're a DeLorean. You don't make any sense. Like you put trash into your body and then you get this this stuff out. Like no one else could do that. I was like, well, I don't know, maybe not, but I don't go around telling people this one. So
That's really funny.
it's just funny, yeah.
Yeah. That is really funny. So, like, when you transitioned to college, were you eating better then, or was it still kind of like that similar diet to what you had in high school?
I mean, I started eating different foods, I guess, mainly
Okay.
because so I had like more bigger meals. I don't know. Yeah, like I would have a better lunch, I guess,
Okay.
instead of eating just,
Fries and
like
chips.
fries and chips. Yeah, $1.10 at
Yeah.
the time, Yeah, so I guess that changed. But I guess when I lived in the dorms too, you could like the first year you live in the dorms and you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, or whatever. That's fine.
Mhm.
But I still like I don't even think I would go for breakfast.
Okay.
Just not a breakfast person.
Gotcha. Okay. And thinking back to when you're in high school and you mentioned being junior nationals and everything, like competing at such a high level from such a young age, like, do you think that pressure made you almost like have to grow up faster in a sense?
Good question. I would say this. I would say gymnastics as a sport um, really makes people be more efficient with everything they do.
Okay.
Like time efficient, more focused. Like you don't have just time to not do your homework and go home and just hang out. Like my days
Hmm.
were always filled, so I was always busy, but like I liked being busy. And maybe I'd have a Sunday where I didn't have to do anything, which is great. You could just lounge, lay around, and not feel guilty about it.
Right.
um, so I don't the competition. I think you do have to like want that type of, I guess you could call it stress. And
Okay.
I never found it that stressful. I always enjoyed it. And I mean, like, literally, that was what was missing. So when I was done with college, I was 24, and then 3 years of PT school, I'm like 27, and I'm like, man, like, I'm not a person that can just go to a workout gym and like lift weights. Like I did movement, like body strength, calisthenic stuff my whole life, and that
Hmm.
part's fun. Like lifting a weight for me doesn't bring me joy. And like building muscle was never my goal when I was a gymnast. And that's like
Okay.
the interesting thing about calisthenics and maybe like your mindset and maybe body image, but you'd be proud of what you look like, but that wasn't the goal,
Yeah.
and like in normal society that is the goal.
Hmm.
Like it actually doesn't matter what you can do, it's just if it looks good, then
Right.
that means you are probably good. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't like another great example. You think of like Jay Lachey from the show Ninja
Hmm.
Warrior, and you look at him, and you would never even think twice if you saw him at a grocery store or like a park or whatever. Right? He's not buff. He's not big. He looks extremely average,
Yeah.
but that's just his body type, which is fine. But he's been training right for I don't know 8 years, and his body is in incredibly good shape, and he's really good at ninja
Yeah.
and it's just funny how his goal is not to put on muscle or take off muscle or whatever. Like there's always like a function that is a better goal in my opinion than looking good you know so
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to look at it, but like you said, it's not necessarily, it kind of goes against the grain of what the norm or like the societal kind of way of doing it is, which it's might be problematic in and of itself.
right, yeah, well, and yeah, it's very very interesting, but like if you also think of it this way, if you look at a bunch of athletes and you say if you look at the gymnasts in general,
Hmm.
I think everyone would say they're in incredible shape,
Yeah.
right? They would say, I want that body.
Right.
But then it's like, you realize they don't lift like any weights,
Yeah.
like none, zero. Like they don't have to lift any weights to look like that.
Mhm.
They just have to be consistent and train consistently. I mean, that's it. Like if people ended up kind of focusing and finding something they actually enjoyed, like learning a skill, I think they'd find that fitness would stick better with them. And that's kind of one of my goals with opening up, because right now I was subleasing, but now I'm looking to find a bigger space for myself to where I can kind of work on this and help guide people towards what I believe in more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have like a vision or a goal for how you want to achieve that?
Right. So I mean, so I have physical therapy, right?
Yep.
And within this physical therapy space, I want to have a almost like a gymnastics floor strip,
Okay.
and so it wouldn't take up the whole room, but it'd be enough to like work on round back handsprings, things of that nature, or even like for adults. I mean, what adult doesn't want to try bouncing on the gymnastics floor because it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But like working on groundwork, learning how to fall, roll, those types of things. Do you know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
that's a safer, softer uh, surface for them. But
Yeah.
then besides that, once again, like for me, like calisthenics, like having rings. I mean, well, of course I would think of rings because that was one of the events I was good at. But
Right.
it's also like extremely good for all your stabilizers of your muscles. So like if you can do a support on paralats or P bars, that's fine. But then the next step is, can you do it on rings?
Yeah.
And then you try and it gets really shaky. Your elbows have to bend, and you have to turn the rings in. And those are just signs of like, all right, I don't have that stability yet, but I can work on it. You know. So I could take someone who can't support themselves on parallettes or P bars, and then we can work a goal up to supporting on rings, and that could take a year, it could take 2 years, it doesn't matter. But the thing is they're going to be a lot stronger.
Yeah.
What One of the interesting things that I always think of as well with like health and I guess like looking good versus being actually strong would be like tendon strength. So
Mm.
my opinion is gymnasts have extremely strong tendons,
Yeah.
and our muscles match what our tendon strength is versus people who go to the gym and just try to get hypertrophy of their muscle mass
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean they have a strong tendon, and that's how you can get ruptures, you know. um, because the thickness of your tendon is kind of like a joke. You could look at Arnold Schwarzenegger at his prime, and you could look at any single person in the United States and say, wow, well, yeah, he's big muscles, but we have the same thickness and tendon. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure Arnold's tendon's a lot stronger than majority of people's, but that's not something that people seem to care about. But if you start
Right.
working on like support on like rings or something like that, your tendon strength, your tensile strength will increase dramatically as well, which will prevent injury and basically make you stronger. Yeah.
This is all really interesting to me because like I've been someone who's always been passionate about like working out in a gym, lifting weights and everything.
Mm.
And now I'm thinking like, yeah, I have had issues with my tendons throughout my life, from various like sports injuries or just, injuries or from working out and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to think about like how there are ways to maybe be a little more proactive with my body that
Yeah.
like aren't
Well,
being inside of a gym.
I was gonna say though, if people enjoy lifting weights, then
Yeah.
continue lifting weights. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, for sure.
this isn't something to say, hey, lifting weights is bad. Like it's
Yeah.
not bad, right?
Right.
Um, but for me, it's extremely boring because
Yeah.
after I'm done lifting it up and putting it down, my brain's saying, now what? And it's like,
Exactly.
do it again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, after I do it again, what do I get out of it? You get to do
Yeah.
it again. Now you go heavier.
Right.
And then it's like,
Yeah.
well, when do I stop getting heavier? Never. Because you're never going to be big. Like, this is the thing, you'll never be big enough.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's just, if your goal is just to get bigger, that in my mind is a very um, open, broad, and somewhat dangerous goal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so. But if you need to get stronger for something, obviously lifting weights will help. Oh, I
Right.
can't carry this 20-pound thing from here to there. Well, you could start working on things of that nature.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And I totally don't and didn't get like the impression that you were, advocating for people to not lift weights if they didn't enjoy it. But I think like the lesson that I'm learning from you, Tyler, is like even though that's something I enjoy and like it always will be, like trying to incorporate other forms of movement and different types of, workouts and activities may be beneficial to my body in terms of like other like strengthening other um areas or parts of my body and not necessarily just like trying to work on like getting a bigger bicep peak or something, just trying to
Right.
work
Yeah.
on like the tendon in my elbow so I can be more functional in just everything I do because I think that even like moving like regular movement throughout my life and daily, plans and whatever sometimes like oh man like that that like I tweak something and now like my body's like feeling it or something so just kind of
Mm.
being more like open to strengthening the body through whether it's, you know, walking more or whether it's like doing different types of stretches or things like that. I think that that could be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So, as a physical therapist, I mean, like, is that something that you think that like are there things that you would advise people to do to kind of like help take care of their bodies in a proactive sense?
Yeah. I would say one of the biggest things that happens with, we'll just say, the majority of adults is that
Hmm.
we pretty much are always sitting.
Yeah.
We're sitting in a car, we're sitting at work, and we go home and we sit on the couch or in a chair, or you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, things that I would just generally advocate for would be to do some sort of extension. So, like
Okay.
hip extension, even shoulder extension, neck extension. Just get your body in that opposite motion somehow, relatively daily, even if it's like 4 or 5 days a week. That's, doesn't have to be anything crazy. The other interesting thing is as we age, our hips will get tight, our ankles will get tight, our knees, probably
Hmm.
knees less tight, but mostly it's coming from the hips and the ankles. And like, we don't really get up and down from the ground. We don't really do much on the ground.
Right.
So for me, another kind of like low hanging fruit is, instead of sitting on the couch all the time, doing some sitting on the ground, you
Okay.
know, being able to get up and down from the ground. Doing like groundwork is very, I think, underrated because
Okay.
it's not hard. Like, you don't need equipment. Can you go from like a side sitting to tall kneeling, which is just on your knees without touching your hands on the ground? Is that difficult? Can you do it with only one leg touching the ground? Like, you can kind of play around with movements like that, because then you end up getting flexibility because your hip is being flexed further than it normally is, and then your hip
Hmm.
is actually being strengthened throughout that range. So, something with like being on the ground or something with extension is probably the two easiest ways for people not to succumb to the very, very typical problems that everyone gets. And I'd also say this, like, back pain isn't necessarily something that you try to never have.
Okay.
It's something that, in my opinion at least, it's something that if you're healthy, if your back is healthy, if your hips are healthy, if your joints are healthy, if when that happens, you're going to recover so much faster that you're not even going to think about it. Like, it'll be 1 or 2 days, versus like weeks or months. And then if you let that continue on, like, oh, okay, yeah, it just got better spontaneously. I didn't really change anything. It just got better over time. Okay, well, now what happened is things have gotten even tighter. I'm sure there's some scarring. Now you have less mobility. It's going to happen again, but even worse. And then it's going to happen again and even worse. Like, usually when I work with patients with back pain or any type of pain, but usually I would just say back, it's never their first time having back pain when it gets really bad, as in like nerve symptoms down their leg or things of
Okay.
that nature. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where, oh my God, I think I need to go see a surgeon type thing. It was never like they were fine and then that happened. Unless maybe you're lifting extremely heavy weight and then there was that one incident, right? Or like you got hit by a bull, or I don't, something crazy like
Right.
that. I'm sure it can happen. But majority of patients I see aren't that those cases.
Right. So it
But
sounds like
yeah, so I'll go ahead.
I was just gonna say it sounds like it's something that like kind of develops slowly over time.
Exactly. And then you just slowly start losing these degrees of freedom or these ranges of motion. And then when you're forced to get into that motion for whatever reason, or if you get so bad that even just bending forward to touch your toes when seated or something like that, or reaching down for your shoelaces on one side can cause it.
Mm.
Like, basically I'm like, this has been brewing for a long time. You got a lot of work to do. I mean, you're here because you want to get out of this pain, I know, but also if you want to try to keep this pain from coming back so badly, there are some other things that you need to clear up. And unfortunately it's years and years, like decades of non-movement usually that causes it.
Gotcha. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like take advantage while you can, like I guess in your youth or, when you have that mobility to just like be more mobile and get the
Maintain it,
movements
right.
in and maintain it. Yeah, so it's not like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like kind of like the use it or lose it,
Right.
kind of
Yep.
mentality.
Exactly. Yeah, another good example that I always thought of too was like, let's say you have like a stream, right?
Hmm.
And there's water flowing. The stream is going to be clear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Now let's have this lump of water that's not moving. And what do you get? You get stuff growing in it, you get bacteria, it starts to smell. Like non-movement is not necessary. Like
right.
typically always leads to bad things.
Yeah,
So thinking of it like that, yeah, use it or lose it, or even just, I don't know, thinking of that analogy just makes me want to move. It's like, yeah, I should probably move.
yeah,
I should probably stop staying in one position for so long.
definitely. And now, when it comes to like daily regular movement, do you have any suggestions on how frequently we should be moving, or like should we set certain goals of like every hour I'm gonna, get up and
Well,
walk a bit or something like that?
so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I like this isn't like even science based. This was just something that I thought of and I thought it was very interesting that we stopped doing, or at least I stopped doing. When's the last time, like, let's say when you woke up this morning, did
Okay.
you like stretch? Like, how like in the movies or as a
Yeah.
kid, or you know what I'm saying? Like, did
Yep.
you do that this
No, I
morning? Like,
didn't.
no, right? I didn't either. Um, do you have a dog, or have you seen someone with a dog, or
I
it
have
doesn't
never had a dog, but I know some people with dogs. Yes.
have dogs, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how young or old those dogs are. They always stretch when they wake up.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I thought that is very interesting. Like, what is it about me that makes me not want to do that now?
Yeah.
But then it's funny if you wake up and you force yourself to do that, it feels really good.
Okay.
Yeah, like so I mean, when you say like how often should you stretch, when should you stretch, it's just it could be as simple as like every morning when you wake up, why don't you just force yourself to do one of those weird stretches and just move in those weird positions and figure out what feels good and what feels tight, because every person's going to be different, you
Yeah.
know? But everyone could find an angle to stretch in that morning that will actually feel good.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's going to change people's lives, but I always just thought, you know what? Why did we stop doing that? Like, when did I stop
Yeah.
doing that? I don't even know when I stopped doing that. Like, a baby does it all
Right.
the time. It's like innate in us. And
Yeah.
then we just lose it. And it's like, it can't be that simple, but it can't be that hard to add it. You know what I'm saying?
True. Yeah. That's a really, really interesting concept that I totally
Isn't it?
didn't even think about till you
You're
mentioned
right.
it.
Yeah. I don't know. I was like, why don't I do that? Because I'm like, oh, maybe it's just because it's a puppy. And then my wife had an older dog, like, on his last legs of his years, and he's still doing it. I'm like, no, they always do it. They
Yeah.
stretch every time they get up. They take a nap, they stretch. Why am I not stretching?
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
start trying that. And anyone
Right.
listening to this, like, you need to start trying it too, and let us know how it
Yeah.
impacts you, because
Right.
I'm
We'll have
very
to do like
curious.
a 10-year study on it then. Yeah.
I
I
know.
stretch
Get the
every
longitudinal
morning.
study.
Yeah. Right.
Morning stretches. All right, let's do it. Let's start the research right now. Okay, perfect. And I kind of thought of this as you're talking about the idea of stretching and everything. One of my I don't know what to call it, but like some like bad habits, I guess you could say, is that I always feel the need to like crack things. So whether it's like my back, my
Mm.
knuckles, my neck. Do you know, is that bad for you? Should I stop doing that?
Right. Okay. So they actually do now know what that crack is.
Okay.
I think it's basically, I don't know if it's carbon or carbon dioxide or something. Basically, it fills into the joint, and then
Okay.
that crack is is the sound of that gas leaving the joint.
Okay.
So after a crack like that, you immediately feel like maybe like a decrease in pain,
Yeah.
and then you also get like an increase in motion of that
Yep.
joint. Okay. but it's all temporary because then the gas will slowly leak back in, and you'll know that you cracked a joint because you can't crack it again right away because the gas needs to fill back up in. It may take
Okay.
30 minutes, right? It might
Right.
differ for every person, but in general, cracking your knuckles will not cause like arthritis.
Okay.
There was a physician that didn't believe this, I don't think, and he donated his body to science after he died. He cracked his right hand, every knuckle on his joint in his right hand, like every day
Yeah.
for like, I don't know, 40, 50 years. And his left hand, he never did it. And he
Okay.
goes, when I die, I want you to look at my joints, and I want to see like if like my right hand is more degenerated from
Yeah.
cracking my knuckles.
Yeah.
And they were exactly the same.
Huh.
So it was a wives' tale. Now,
Interesting.
what would I say for people who crack a joint? Well, you're cracking the joint because you're trying to get relief,
Yep.
typically, right? Or
Yep.
it's just a habit, right?
Yeah.
I would say the joint that wants to crack the most, or just throughout time like that, um, usually is stiff, which means you're
Okay.
not using that joint enough, and so probably movement once again is
Okay.
better. And so if you crack something and then move it, I don't like that's you're gonna get technically more movement
Yeah.
after you crack it than not cracking.
Right.
So I would say if you crack things, that's fine, but it may be telling you something, right? Like, all
Yeah.
right, cracking is fine, but I should follow up with movement in the direction that I cracked it, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
It does. Yeah.
So because you're not fixing anything by cracking it.
Yeah.
This is another thing. I mean, like, so chiropractors will say they're realigning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, technically, when you crack your knuckle, was your knuckle out of place? Like, do you think your
No.
knuckle was out of place? No,
No.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's out of place. Like,
Right.
I can crack my daughter's back and my daughter's knuckle. You can crack a baby's knuckle. It was never out of place, you
Right.
know. So, what the chiros are doing is they're actually relieving some symptoms and increasing your mobility, but then it's up to that person to follow through with some
Mhm.
movement and to take care of the problem further.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't
Yeah.
think Cairo. I'm not saying Kairos are quacks. I'm just saying it's a very small piece to the puzzle, like maybe
Yeah.
10-15%. So
Yeah.
if all you do is cracking, then you're missing out on the bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
But it's not bad for you. So like if
Okay.
someone's like, I'm gonna crack your back, be like, no, I don't want arthritis in it.
Right.
You're
Okay.
gonna get arthritis by not moving your back, more so
Okay.
than by moving it. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So, and I'm not super knowledgeable on the body and joints and muscles and everything. So this might be slightly incorrect, but now I'm just thinking, like you mentioned, you might get arthritis from lack of movement. Um, is it like carpal tunnel, like with your hands? Isn't that from like an excess of using them?
So carpal tunnel is actually more of a nerve problem,
Okay.
and it's
Okay.
because just imagine two buns, and those are your muscles, and
Yeah.
then your median nerve, which runs through your hand, is right in between those patties. So the
Okay.
tighter, or even the more compression, like imagine, like I don't know, like back in the day, they used to have like with the keyboards, they'd have that thing for your wrist that you
Yeah.
put your wrist on for long periods of time,
Yep.
and if that compressed that nerve for hours on end every day, then that nerve would become triggered and hot, which means like you could almost tap that area and feel the symptoms of like
Okay.
nerviness. And that's more of a nerve problem, not really an arthritic problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
That
that
makes
one is
sense.
for that one's more from overuse. So basically if you stretched out those muscles and
Mm.
got them looser and not so tight, and you didn't have compression on that nerve, over time that nerve will heal
Okay.
and be happy. Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. And now, Tyler, kind of switching gears a little bit. So, you've always been competing at a high level, and then you're going to grad school and everything, and then competing with the Warrior. You're married. You have 3 kids. How do you find the balance to do everything. And I know you mentioned like you like to stay busy, but like I mean, even with competing on Ninja, like how do you find the time to run your business, to train, to compete, to be with your family? Has that been difficult for you?
Right. I mean, the balance is really tough. Now,
Mm-hmm.
before my most recent child was born, it was actually getting pretty easy because both my girls were in elementary school, and so then I would have a decent amount of time. Now I've got a little man, and it decided to make it a lot harder on myself, but it's okay because he's my son.
Yeah.
It's only temporary. But I would say, like, one of the sacrifices I've made in the past 2 seasons of ninja, the past 2 years, is I train at a ninja gym one time a week. that
Okay.
was that was the extent of my training. And then I would go home and work on whatever I found I was weakest on during that week. So if I felt like my fingertip strength was weak, then I would do some extra hanging just throughout. I have like a hang board at my house. Or if I felt like my pulling was weak, I would do more pull up type stuff. I felt like my lock off was weak, I would work more lock off stuff that week. So
Right.
I could work on things, but it wasn't like, all right, I'm setting 3 hours to train. It was like, all right, I'm setting like 10 minutes.
Okay. Got it. Tyler, are you still there? I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, someone
Okay.
called again. All right.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. So as I got further in the season and making it to Vegas, I'd bump it
Hmm.
up to 2 times a week. So there'd be about a month to a month and a half I'd work out like Thursday night and then Sunday night. So they'd always be nights.
Okay.
And then for me, because I mostly see gymnasts or, like kids, I would see most of them, 4 o'clock or later out of
Yeah.
school. And that's my wife works in a school, my kids go to school. So basically, they're all home. I can go to work. And then when I have patients, and then if I don't have patients, I get to spend time with them.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'll get a few, maybe just other normal people. And like, if they want to come during the day, hero naps around this time. So then I'll say, all right, yeah, why don't you come over and I can get the session and then because he's on his nap type thing.
Right.
So you kind of make it work.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's a fine balancing act, but
right.
it's worth it.
Yeah, you got to find out how to make it work. But
Yeah.
I'd also say this, like, I don't think the training is as tough for my wife as me going and competing on the show. Because if
Yeah.
I make it to Vegas, you're gone for like a whole week, which
Oh,
means she
wow.
has to take a week off of work. And then this past year was extra terrible because um, it was during like literally the last 2 weeks. It was the second to last week of school, and like
Mhm.
if you work at the school district, you just can't take off one of the last couple of weeks of school for a whole week when you're literally going to go on summer break.
Right.
Like it's like no, you can't. we're
Yeah.
not we're not allowing this. It just makes sense. And so that made it tricky. So my wife took off a day, then my wife's mom took off a day, and then I had my aunt come out. Like it was just, I mean, I was very thankful, but I feel
Yeah.
like it was quite a burden to everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like it's like to anyone that watches the show and even myself as someone that enjoys the show, there's like so much that you don't really like behind the scenes that you don't really consider, like the
Mm,
timing of it or how it impacts, all the athletes that compete.
right. Yeah. Well, and then plus, of course, they want the kids on, and I'm
Yeah.
running at, I don't know, 11 o'clock Vegas time, which is like 1 a.m.,
Yeah.
our time, Central Time. So it's like, yeah, we'll wake up. And then my wife's like, oh, I got to put makeup on and everything. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess like in terms of Ninja moving forward, like is it something that you hope and plan on doing, as long as you're able to, or do you have any
Yeah.
like goal specific plans with it?
Well, we'll see because if I end up finding a space and I have a higher rent to pay, then that may make it to where I should need to shift more focus onto that and more
Mm-hmm.
time to that. But I'm not sure. I know my wife would rather me, or not rather me. She would like it if I didn't do it because it's helpful. from a family perspective, but I mean, I still just enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy the training and I'm still good at it, right? Like
Yeah.
if I like my body was falling apart and I like didn't feel very confident in my skills, then it's really easy to hang it up.
Yeah.
It's tough when you feel like you could still keep going. It's just
Right.
once again the balance isn't balanced anymore,
Yeah.
and so the balance unfortunately may go out of balance and I may not be able to do it, but if it doesn't, I mean, of course, I mean, I really do enjoy doing the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I mean, I've always enjoyed watching you on the show, and I mean, you've always been someone who, since the first time I saw you run, I was like, wow, like this guy's awesome. I feel like I can relate. Um, and just it's been cool to be inspired through you, doing what you're passionate about, which is just kind of going back to that theme of movement throughout life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Well, the last question I want to ask, I always just kind of a little interesting when I speak to someone who's a parent. What's like one of the biggest or some important life lesson that you've learned from your kids?
Hmm. So I'm trying to think.
Okay.
I mean, one of the interesting things is like if you have multiple children, how different they can be,
Yeah.
even when they come from obviously the same two parents.
Right.
And like, and it blows my mind. Like Aria, my firstborn, is pretty much more like me, and my wife
Okay.
would say she's exactly like me, which is fine. But then, so like more outgoing, more time, and I'm not necessarily. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily outgoing, especially as a kid. Probably now a little bit
Yeah.
more outgoing, but like she's like extremely outgoing, extroverted, will just go and talk to people, make friends, blah blah blah. And then like our middle child now, she's like very okay with being at home and just quiet. And it's just like, how are you two even sisters? Yeah.
Right.
It's just so funny how different they can be. So like personalities are they're born with them.
Yeah.
They definitely are.
That is kind of like a funny, interesting thing to pick up on. But definitely, I think that's the cool thing too that makes everyone so unique. Just those little
Right.
personality traits, and even though you might be siblings or family, you can be vastly different from each other, and that's totally
Yeah.
okay.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Well, Tyler, for anyone that's listening, and maybe they're in your general area and might be, looking at finding, some place for physical therapy, or if you are able to kind of develop your goal with helping people find different ways of movement, and just to follow along with your journey on Ninja Warrior, is there any like website, social media, or anything that you want to put out there for people to stay in contact with?
Yeah, sure. So my email address would be yamapt@yahoo.com if they ever want to get in contact with me. And then my website is www.yamapt.com. So, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And I'll put those in the description of the episode. So to anyone listening, if you want to get in contact with Tyler or just say like, hey, heard you on the podcast and it was really awesome, learn about you or anything, feel free to reach out to him that way. Or if you are in any of his services or anything, it'd be a great way to get in touch. But Tyler, is there any last like thoughts or message you leave to anyone listening?
No, I think that's it. It was really a fun conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about all the different fun things that I have in my mind and went through. So hopefully it helps someone.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for your time and for sharing everything. It's really cool to connect with you and to hear about your passions in your life a little bit, especially after seeing you on the TV for a few years now. It's cool to kind of hear some of the background and the things that you don't really see or hear, listening to your stories and stuff. So thank you for taking the time, and I'm wishing you the best of luck with everything from a personal standpoint, family standpoint, and also as you do hopefully continue your career with Ninja. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to talk.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Take
Okay.
care.
All right, bye.
Bye.